Well, okay, thank you for coming this Mobile World Progress. Thank you to Samsung for inviting me. I'm going to try to convince you about why the web, for me, is the right answer for most of the developments that companies are doing right now. But I don't want to convince you without supporting data. I want you to show some of the numbers that, for me, are creating the proper environment to propel the web forward. Now, I think my colleagues here today, Belén, Dom, and Diego, have been prepared the path for this talk because they have spoken about a lot of interesting new APIs that gives the web a new dimensions to expand. And you have seen the power of graphics. You have seen new ways of interaction via this gamepad API, power of sound, of sensors, and I'm going to go deep into one dimension I think is very relevant, which is offline network, to be independent of the network, offline behavior, and operating system integration. This section is about talking to you about the bright side of the web, what we like of the web. And this is just a quick reminder. For me, the main characteristics of the web are that it is interoperable, frictionless, and free. And of course, it has this fantastic thing Belén told us about before, that is the URL, that make web properties. I'm a little bit a skeptic when talking about web applications, so I prefer the term web property, something that is in the web, or simply websites. And you find that when I ask, if I recommend you an application in the store, an Android or an iOS application, well, you'd probably be reluctant to install, mainly because perhaps your device is full, or perhaps because you are not on a reliable connection right now. But I bet you that if I share you an URL, you will likely click on it and see what happened, because internet or web properties or web interaction are ephemeral. So you visit, you see if you like or not, and if you don't, you know for sure that nothing is left there, so it's not occupying part of your precious device space. Let's talk about interoperability, for instance. Here, this chart represents the growing of several kinds of interaction, 3 of them: desktop interactions, mobile applications, and the mobile web. This quote I'm showing to you now, this one, talks about an opportunity discovered in 2015. The scene has changed. And actually, if you see this, there has been a decrease on the level of interaction in desktop. And if you notice, there is a slowdown, and a lot of experts think that we are we are reaching some kind of breaking point where applications are so normal that they are not growing more. But even so, this statement holds. And if we want to reach more people, if we want to reach more audience, then we need to explore all the ecosystem. And that means to be in every possible channel. And the web is ubiquitous, is totally interoperable, is available in every platform. You only need a browser, and that is something normal right now. It's frictionless. This is not an academic research. This is part of a company that realized that every step they added to their instant messaging application was reducing the potential users by 20%. And this is very funny because there is a step in between looking at discovering the application in the store and actually install. That's okay. But there is another 20% of loss in between install and open up. So, you know, I recommend this instant message application to you, and you say, oh, okay, let's take a look. And I press download, and then I forgot, because as I think was Diego talking about 100-second download, and I forgot that I'm downloading an application. And by the time the application is totally downloaded and installed, I don't remember. And suddenly I see a new icon in my home screen. What was that? Remove. Of course, from open application to the end of the chat, these are application-specific steps, and we should try to cook them, but it's beyond the scope of this talk. But this is the main problem with the store model. That you need to discover, you need to enter the store, which probably means for you to switch a context, because you are in a call or you are in a conversation, and you need to enter the store, you need to browse the store. Perhaps the reference your friends sent to you is not accurate, so you need to look for this application manually, and then you need to install, and you need to wait for the process to finish, and then you need to remember that you that you downloaded it, and open. Well, you know that this is not happening in the web. The web is more direct. Free, as in free speech. If you have published something in a store ever, you probably know what I'm talking about. In the internet, there is no review process, so your content is not a subject of a third party or their policies. And of course, there is no content censorship. And I think this is important because I was part of a reviewing committee of store applications, and it is not fair. It is, as you probably know, you can pay to appear in front of before your competitors, and even if the system allow you to do that, that is something you can compare with the internet. You can invest your money in AdWords campaigns. It is not a fair process. If tomorrow I, not you, if I realize that you are probably violating an IP, an intellectual property, I can ask you, even if the parts agree, I can ask you to remove the content. Well, not in the internet. You can ask, but I cannot censor your behavior in advance. Discoverability. This is the amount of unique visitors. This is the amount of properties, of application, of software, call it whatever you want, that reach this milestone, 5 to 10 millions of users, of unique visitors, 10 to 20 and 20. And you see the channel that allow a lot of properties, a lot of application to reach this number is the mobile web. These are all figures extracted from the 2016 US Mobile App Report. I want to highlight the US part. This is different in the numbers are different for other regions, but the relative figures are quite similar. And you see the mobile web is incredible. Is a lot of higher than mobile app. And in desktop they are counting into not native desktop application, but desktop web. This is a new chart they included in this edition about what are the main channels and main channels for advertising your application. And here we can see the same results or coherent results with the first chart, showing that we have reached some kind of break point in the stores. So the stores are not attracting new people to your applications. The main channels now are social, but I want you to notice how the website is, the internet is also a channel for allowing you to publicize your application. And the truth for the next section is that there is some kind of model when talking about native applications and the web. There is a relationship, a clear relationship we will explore soon. And what we want is to take advantage of that model that is as simple as saying that you need to attract your users using the web, and then you need to convert them into engaged users of your experiences. And we will see how native apps excel into engaging users, but the web is incredible into reaching audiences. So let's talk about what are your expectations about applications in the mobile world. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer, and we can give socks for those answers that convince me. What is an application? Well, it's something you probably use every day. So what's an application? What's an app?
Piece of software that solves a problem.
Well, it's quite good. And now without using software? The software world?
An algorithm that solves a problem. That would classify it more now. A tool that solves a problem.
A tool, okay. Fair enough.
Solves a problem that must be ignored.
You can try in Spanish if you want, and we can translate your definition. Nope. I really like this part of the talk because here this is the normal answer. You know, this is the normal reaction. Is something related with interactivity that kind of answer always appear. A piece of software. This is something I really like because this piece is like you identify with something physical, no? But here I can ask you, what is the application? Well, left or right? Okay, left, right. The left one or the right one? Left one. What is the application? Left. Raise your hands. Right. Both are YouTube. I'm not counting with the browser application, okay? I'm not talking about the browser application. I'm talking about YouTube. What do you think is the application here for YouTube? Yes, but it's an application from Chrome. It's not YouTube, and we can see it's not YouTube. Okay. For me, application depend on expectations. It is easy for us to recognize new applications, and some of you say the left one, okay, and the right one. None of you raise your hands. Okay, because we can tell what an application is based on our experience, our expectation. We can expect that application run independent on connectivity, even if the YouTube application show you this crappy error page, but it's not breaking your experience. You are not. If you were visiting YouTube and then suddenly you run out of connectivity, you will end in this game, which, okay, is funny. You know, there are pterodactyls in advanced parts, or perhaps not so advanced, but very advanced for me. And it's quite funny, but it's not YouTube. YouTube is, the web is breaking your experience by returning to the browser. Or, for instance, applications are first-class citizens. In here, I can ask you if I don't know, where is the Twitter application here? Left side or right side? Left side, isn't it? Because you immediately recognize that you are browsing tabs in the right side while you are browsing application, whatever they mean, in the left side. And of course, I can receive push notification. Did you know that there is an API, a web API for showing notifications in the web? Raise your hand. Well, there is one. And you know, now there is another API that allow you to receive push notification from a server? Well, let us play a game. Tell me what is the native app. I'm talking about Twitter. Left one. Raise your hand for the left one. And the right one? The right one. And now? Left one. Right one. I didn't remember. No, I do remember, but I updated these pictures past week because now it's in the first when I wrote this presentation was last year, and it was mostly obvious because the web application includes the picture. Now is the left one, okay? Includes the picture, but not the native application. But this version, this new version of Twitter, is reducing the gap between both versions. It's quite amazing. I think these pictures are from, I don't remember, perhaps 2 weeks or something like that. A lot of people caught it by pointing that the difference between the thunder you see and the search box. And I'm now managing 2 accounts. One is my personal account, and the other is the Web Games Day account. And I keep them separated. One, I manage it in my native application, and the other in the browser. And from time to time, I feel I'm not sure about if I'm going to tweet with my personal account or not, because I don't distinguish between them. But you know now. Why you know? Because you see the browser. And now it's the same, because you see the browser. So when you are using web application, you enter in that web mode, and you know you are opening the browser, and then when automatically you enter in this web mode, and you expect to see the browser UI around, something that you don't expect in the native application. As Alex Russell said in a quote, in a long quote I put in the beginning of this section, a web application is not about a technical definition, it's about fulfilling user expectations. The best way to define an application is not to define it, but to recognize it. In the mobile world, users expect to interact with application. So it is somehow granted that the things, the pieces you interact with are applications. But in the browser, by interacting with browser tabs, you are interacting with this web application that are also pieces of interaction, but inside the context of the browser. These are the numbers for the rich capability of the mobile web, 3 times more than an application. But the sad reality that is people spend up to 20 times more time in applications. This is the big truth out there about how native applications and the web relates. You are trying to make your users to step on your service, on your landing page. You are preparing a quite catching landing page in order to convert those users into real engaged users of your application. So you use the web to reach, and the native application and the application concept to engage with your users. And this is something that is highlighted by one of the key points in the US Mobile Report this past year. About mobile web is the primary vehicle for expanding audience reach, but applications are where heavy engagement happens. And don't fool ourselves. If you are preparing unless you are using some kind of hybrid library that provides you with interoperable solutions like Cordova or something like this, React Native or something like that, you are spending twice the time and twice the resources, at least, when preparing your application to be run in every platform available. Not if you do the same in the web. But in the web, your users will be expecting to interact with the web. What the web can do to solve this situation? For fulfilling user expectation for apps, and it is not mandatory your web property, your website, to become an application tomorrow. One thing about progressive web app is that part is that initial work, progressive, and you can add these techniques to your website and test if you need more parts of this progressive web app approach or not. For instance, new papers, online versions of new papers found that making their apps to work offline was something relevant, but not making them to appear in the home screen, something that we will see it is perfectly possible. So this doesn't mean they don't want to add their application to your home screen. This only means that they don't mind their applications to appear in your home screen right now, perhaps because they don't have the resources, perhaps because they realize that they are this kind of experiences that are better suited for the internet, because reading news is something ephemeral, is something primarily based on consuming, not interacting. But they discover that providing offline experiences is something good. So they only implement that part of the progressive web app related or core technologies. But if you want to fulfill all the expectations related to a native application, then you need to integrate with the operating system. You need to provide reliable performance. And I'm not talking only about network, but also about smoothness, animation, 60 frames per second, those kind of things. And to be independent on the browser. Because if your user see the browser, then he will likely enter in this browser mode, and he probably forgot about he was interacting with an application. The first technology is the web manifest. The web manifest is this JSON file that you put in some place inside your server, and you link with an HTML tag. And at the moment you link, you are providing, you link this file. This file is providing meta information for the operating system to know how to integrate with your application. Dom was showing in his presentation how we can change the theme color, how we can change the background, how to provide icons for different resolution. This is a part of a real manifest for progressive web application called Flipkart Lite. You can try right now. I think it is working perfectly in Opera, probably in Samsung Internet, also in Firefox, in Chrome. I tried them in most of the browsers, and it's working fine. But if you want to see, for instance, how it changes the theme color, try on Chrome. Well, now here you can see 3 things related to the previous manifest. This first one is showing the effect of adding this display standalone. With display standalone, I'm requesting the browser to show my application with no browser UI. Okay? It is different than full screen. Full screen is also available because here with a standalone, you will see the status bar, and with full screen, you won't see the status bar. So it's a little bit different, but the main feature from display standalone mode is that you don't see the browser UI. The browser UI is hidden. Here you can see theme color, and here in the middle picture, you can see how the browser UI has changed its color to blue. This is the value. This is the color value of that blue, this theme color property. And finally, combining the background color and icons, the Chrome runtime is providing you with this splash page that is the onboarding experience to your application. And actually, what Flipkart Lite is doing is really smart. They put their first loading screen, they mimic the loading screen. They mimic this splash screen with the loading screen. So you see this and how this fades into the real loading screen. And you see how a circle appears, and it's indicating that the page is loading just for 1 second, 1.5 seconds, or something like that. Well, the second feature the second technology I'm going to introduce you is service workers. How many of you know what a service worker is? Cool. This is a 10,000 feet point of view. But service workers are JavaScript programs that run in a separated thread. They are independent from the browsers being open. With this, I mean that some of the functionality can run without having a browser open. They are some kind of background services, and that's a part of the service. And they are driven by events. Which events? These events. I'm not talking about the life cycle of how do you install this piece of JavaScript in your browser. I'm talking about what make your JavaScript code to handle, to run. And these are the three main events we are working that are available right now. But I think Dom was talking about web payments also. And web payments are adding a new functional event that is payment request, I think. And this is an evidence that this specification was conceived to be extensible. And now you can take advantage. If you think of some service you want to add to your web page, you can add this functional event that will make your JavaScript file, your JavaScript worker, to run. They are fetch, sync, and push. This is the fetch. This is how fetch works. You have this page underscore, this client page, trying to make a request to the internet. Perhaps it's a JSON file, perhaps it's your profile picture, perhaps it's a piece of CSS, whatever. And when it's requesting, or perhaps you are navigating to a different page, okay? So when the page underscore try to request something to the internet, your service worker run in the middle, put itself in the middle, intercept that request, and can provide an answer from different kind of sources. For instance, the cloud, the internet is perfectly valid. Perhaps it's a generated, it's a completely procedural response, or perhaps it can use something that it is called an offline catch. An offline catch is like a key value database, but instead where the keys are requests and values are responses. So I'm associating a request in the, for instance, style.css to the content for that CSS. And as service workers are fully programmable, you can do things like, okay, I'm going to reach the network for the first load. I'm going to store it in this offline catch, and for the second and successive request, I'm going to save the copy in my catch. Or perhaps you can choose a strategy, something like, well, if the latency is no more than 100 milliseconds, I'm going to try to answer from the cloud, from the internet, with the most up-to-date content. But if I'm hitting 100 milliseconds, I prefer to save from the catch. Okay? But at the same time, I'm going to reach the network and spend some time there while I'm updating my local catch. Well, actually, when you are offline, Flipkart changes its interface and show you this new UI. And here we have a very interesting enhancement over the baseline. That is, do you remember how YouTube showed itself when there were not connectivity? Now it's the same. It is not broken. It's not breaking your context. It is not forcing you to make a context switch because you are not seeing the dinosaur here. The browser, the service worker is intercepting the request to the network, realize that there is no network, and is providing a fallback inside the application. So you are not breaking the user experience. This is push. Push. This is push. How push works? Well, first, the web application communicates with a push server, but it's not communicating with some special REST API. It's a JavaScript API. It's something like, hey, subscribe me, okay? And as an answer, the client receives an endpoint, and an endpoint is a URL, nothing more. Well, it's something more, but it's mainly a URL, okay? And this endpoint, the client application is responsible to send this subscription information to the web app server. So when the web app server wants to communicate something to the client side, it makes a post to that URL, a simple post. And this service, the push server, will communicate with the browser, and the browser will generate a push event that will be intercepted by your service worker. Okay? Once the service worker intercepts the push, you can do a variety of things. It depends a little bit of the implementation. For instance, I think that Chrome doesn't allow you to not showing a real notification. So you need to inform the user about you are doing something in the background. And Firefox implementation does, but with some limits. So if you are sending a lot of notification and not showing a real user interface notification, then you are banned for a while. Of course, this can lead to other. For instance, the push can signal an update. and you can use the Fetch API to request new content and upload and update your offline cache. That's perfectly feasible. The APIs are not restricted to the event. The event is triggered by several causes, and you can combine the use of the APIs provided to the service worker. This is a figure about how the retention improves with push notification. Of course, as you advance in time, the retention decreases, but when push is enabled, you see that retention is better. But caution, because this figure is from 2015, and now we see this. From 2015 to 2016, we see an increasing number of people rejecting notifications. So this is a model, this is some kind of advance that notification should be timely, relevant, and precise. Timely is that don't notificate about everything, okay? And don't notificate, or don't try to notificate the user about one thing, but at every time. No, because every notification has its moment. Be relevant, offer something that is relevant. Actually, this is so important that now people is performing some kind of user segmentation to send customized per user customized notifications. And be precise. Be precise. Why? Because you know the space for a notification, so don't tell me your life there. Just be precise. Be short and accurate. Sync. Sync is easy. Sync is actually this is just one half of the full implementation, but it's simply this. I'm recovering connectivity. I want to do something. I want to react. And this is not only about, you are gathering behavior statistics in Google Analytics or something like that, and then you recover the internet and you use it to send those events, those recorded events. No, it's not only for that. It can be as useful as you are writing a tweet, you send, but you are offline, so I store the content, and when I realize I'm online, I try to resend this content also. Well, this has the three main functional events now. I say that this is just one half, because the other is something, this is called, I think, one-off sync, but there will be another for synchronizing task in a while, so I can program some kind of alarm or of the big brother of the set timeout in order to do something periodically. But service workers were conceived to try to minimize the abuse of doing something in the background that can, for instance, eat your battery. So they are time limited, and this is this way because you need imagine using a service worker to keep yourself doing an expensive computation. That will ruin your battery. It is not. They are not conceived for do that kind of things. So they are time limited, and you can access IndexedDB to keep information from one execution of the service worker to another, but you cannot rely on global state because they will be killed by the browser sooner than later. And more functional events are coming. So, the right choice. Knowing that now we can fulfill the expectations for the users, and we can tell them you are using an application, and with that we can trigger all the educational behavior that we have teach to the users by making them experiment interactivity through the application stores. But now we can tell them, well, you can live the same kinds of interactivity, but you only need to click this link to access the content. Now, what is the right choice? This is my recommendation. Start thinking about the web, but the web has limitations, of course. Try to target the web. If you have business arguments, for instance, my developers are not used to work in the web. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Or I discover my users live mainly in iOS ecosystem. That's perfectly fine also, because you are building a product and you have a business goals or business argument. Okay, that's perfectly fine, so stay away. And if you need access to non-available APIs, of course, you can step away. And so the argument, although it seems obvious, the argument is when you start this kind of discussion, but the web cannot access whatever. Okay, if that is vital for delivering your experience, it's perfectly fine. Stay away. But you have discovered along all this Mobile World Progress Conference that the web is more able than ever to tackle or to address a lot of problems, a lot of situations that application usually solves. For instance, you have WebRTC for peer-to-peer communications. You have WebGL for accessing the GPU of your device. You have sensors. You have access to Bluetooth in some of the browsers. And so think twice when you are telling yourself, no, the web is not for me because it's not capable, because not only it is capable. Now you can fulfill user expectation about application with only using web technologies. Okay.
So that's cool. I love the end of the talk. I think that the guidelines that you put up here reminded me of the time last year when I was working in UK Government Digital Service, which is part of the Cabinet Office in the UK, and they have the same set of guidelines for applications that are being written for government, for the UK government. Basically, the mantra is web first, and yeah, if for some reason you need to do something native, then fine, but if only for the reason of getting the widest coverage possible for the widest number of people possible, which is kind of like a government mandate, then that's it makes much more sense to think about web first. So so thank you for all that. It's actually quite inspiring. Any questions before we wrap up? Somebody else wants socks. You want socks, but do you have a question? Okay.
I think the main problem with web apps or this kind of apps, progressive apps, is that they are not available in iOS, and you have some arguments to stay away if you have to build your business in iOS. But I was expecting from Mozilla to continue working on Firefox OS, because we don't need to have only two players in this market, Android and iOS. So I was hoping that Firefox OS will change this, but Mozilla left Firefox OS. I don't know if there is a new player that will come and replace this effort from Mozilla. I don't know. Maybe Samsung, I don't know.
Well, it's a good question. It's good enough to get socks. I will say I was involved in the Firefox OS project as well, and I share your pain.
It's not only a good question, it's a hard question. Yeah. It's very opinionated inside Mozilla. And, well, now the discourse behind progressive web app is very similar to the discourse we held when defending Firefox OS, when supporting Firefox OS. But arguably there are opinions that say that Firefox OS succeeded into building an HTML browser operating system, but not a web operating systems. From my point of view, I was part of the new Gaia architecture team, design team, trying precisely to bring service workers, that was my part, into Firefox OS core application. And, and we discovered that Firefox OS was trying to advance for reasons more related to dates, to deadlines, because when you are working with other companies, you need to meet their deadlines at some extent, that we need to accelerate the process of standardizing everything. And we move, I think, this is my personal opinion, I think we moved faster than the web. I'm not trying to I don't know how to say in English. I'm not trying to be rude with the committees of W3C, okay? I'm saying that we try to standardize in a way that doesn't fit how the W3C works. Because we needed those APIs available right now, because we need to ship a real device, you know, and we need those. Nevertheless, we saw, or I personally saw, how every technology we ship in Firefox OS is now shipping in the web. I remember a discussion with Jake Archibald about this when I say, hey, we had a push server before in Mozilla, and he answered me, well, but you miss the web part of progressive web apps. And I agree at some extent, okay? If there will be another initiative like this, I hope so, sincerely. But if you look at the numbers, you will see that our relevancy in the web is almost deniable. And this is not something like, this of course is not something I like to say, but you can see the numbers. The numbers are public. So, I don't know.
So I have a quick perspective on that. First of all, that I think Firefox OS played an important role in pushing a number of standards forward and pushing for better web on mobile. And so even though as a project it didn't succeed in what it was doing, I think it had an influential role in pushing the web forward on mobile in the same way that Firefox did when it first came out as a desktop browser. I think that one of the things that we're seeing now is that some of the technologies, like for instance, take as an example the manifest file format. Firefox OS had a manifest file format. It was its own manifest file format. Now we have a standard manifest file format that is implemented by many different browser engines and is implementing or enabling save to home screen across many different types of devices and different OSs and that kind of thing. I think arguably that's more important than and then I think on the last point on iOS, I still hold out hope that we will see an iOS implementation of service worker and manifest file. I mean, iOS Safari was first to market in enabling save to home screen with their own meta tag stuff, which you can still do. So if you build a progressive web application that supports that stuff and service worker and manifest file, you can still kind of have that same experience on iOS. But we really want them to join us and have service worker and all that good stuff as well. So yeah,
Actually, there's a funny story about that. I remember a conversation in one of the Firefox OS threads talking about, I tried to tweet them later, talking about how two different applications could interact. And in the discussion, we were suggesting to use something like a HTML, XML HTTP request, no? But providing also a listener for foreign request. And now we are about to ship something called foreign fetch that allows you to do exactly that. And it was very funny because I remember in that conversation to say, yes, we need somehow something like an XML HTTP response interface, and now we have a request and response interfaces. It's kind of funny.
It happens a lot this way in the web standards, yeah. But okay, so anyway, I think we're going to close off there. It's 8, so we're going to go have drinks at Dos Treses, which is where Swedish Beers is kicked off. So if anybody wants to come join me, I'm going to be walking over there in order to have some beer and some more discussion and stuff like that. Thank you, all of you diehard fans who came out today. I really appreciate it. I think you all got the benefit of some really amazing talks, and I really want to thank our speakers. So thank you, everybody who talked.